2013 marked the year of Luigi, and honestly, Nintendo didn't do all too much for the poor guy. However, one thing they did do was release a DLC for New Super Mario Bros. U, known as New Super Luigi U. This would play as a much more difficult version of the base game, with brand new levels within each and every world. Of all things Nintendo did in 2013 for Luigi, this was by far the best, as it came with a very affordable price tag, along with a semi-new experience in the series. In today's video, I'm going to go over why I believe New Super Luigi U to be the most solid entry in the New Super franchise, at least from a platforming standpoint. So one thing that stands out upon starting the game is that the opening cutscene is nearly identical to that of New Super Mario Bros. U, with the only difference being the absence of Mario. This time, only his hat is present for some reason, but that's besides the point. Along with the opening cutscene being identical, so is the world map. Now this may come as a disappointment to some on a first playthrough, and with good reason. I mean, at the time you needed to pay extra money to even experience this game, so finding out what the world map is the exact same as before might have upset some of the fans. But once starting the first level, you'll notice something, and that is the timer is reduced all the way down to 100 seconds. This does cause every level to be extremely short, with none of them even containing a checkpoint. But to me, this was a genius idea. For one, Super Luigi U has much better designed levels than any of its predecessors, and I firmly believe that the reason for this is due to the strict time limit placed upon each stage. The developers needed to ensure that each customer got their money's worth, so they really seemed to zero in on perfecting the level design over anything else, and it shows. This game was advertised as a much more difficult version of Mario Bros. U, and this becomes apparent almost immediately. What I love so much about the levels within this game is how fast-paced they are. This creates a variety of benefits that would otherwise be missing from the previous entries. Each stage focuses solely on one idea that is only seen in that level, then tossed aside and never used again. This makes for a much more fresh, but also replayable experience, as unlike the other games, you really can't ever predict what's going to come next with this one. I mean, some ideas were just crazy here and posed a genuine challenge. This is by far the trickiest modern 2D Mario game, and in turn, the most enjoyable, at least for me. Now I know in my review of New Super Mario Bros. Wii a while back, I had said that I enjoyed that entry the most, but I failed to even consider Luigi U at the time, as I was really only thinking of the Mario games, so this one really didn't register with my mind. Fortunately, I eventually got around to playing this obscure title and it really was worth it. On top of amplifying every level's difficulty and adding a strict time limit, there's also the movement, which is much tougher to get a grasp on this time around. The core moveset is still the same, however, rather than performing fluid jumps and being able to stop on a dime like before, you now have to deal with Luigi's physics, which, as everyone knows, means slipping all over the place. More times than not I would fall off a stage simply due to how clumsy Luigi's traversal is, but it honestly just adds to the experience. However, one benefit to his arsenal is this very exploitive floaty jump, which can help greatly in reaching platforms or saving your life last second. At times, Luigi feels so floaty, I swear he's flying. It's ridiculous how much height and distance you can get at times. Now I'm going to go over the levels a bit more in depth now because I really haven't touched upon them, but as I mentioned earlier, they are pretty brilliant. In fact, I would go as far as to say that New Super Luigi U has some of the best designed levels in the entire 2D series, including the classic games. Now I know, that may sound ridiculous to some, but hopefully you can hear me out and see where I'm coming from. There's lots of improvements to this game that every other entry in the series horribly failed at. For instance, there are far less auto-scrolling and water levels this time around, and even when you do encounter one of these, more times than not, there's a very enjoyable gameplay feature thrown into the mix. So rather than waiting agonizingly for a level to scroll by or slowly swimming through a long drawn out water stage, you now have to focus on some other third-party distraction thrusted upon you, which makes these shortened levels feel even quicker and in turn, much more tolerable and less dreadful. I also love the sheer amount of assets and mechanics exclusive to this entry. For example, in the beach world there's a level where the sole idea rests within these little huts that you have to use for platforming. This was one of the most memorable stages to me because these huts were only used here, and they served their purpose greatly. Something that Mario Bros. U greatly struggled with in my opinion was its lack of original ideas. Every world just felt like the same basic water, forest, sky, mountain theme, blah 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 that we've already seen countless times. And while Luigi U may still have these overused tropes involved, the levels are so consistent and so inventive that I found myself not even noticing that this game just reused the map from Mario Bros. U, because immediately upon booting up a level there was always something unique and intriguing launched my way. Now if there's one thing in New Super Luigi U that I beg of you not to do, it would be playing as Nabbit. I know this game can get pretty difficult at times, but using this purple thief to blast your way through any level just completely negates the entire point of what this entry was trying to establish. When you become immune to every single enemy in the game, it completely ruins the experience, so trust me when I say to just play through this game with Luigi if you want to feel that sense of accomplishment throughout the entirety of the game. I'm not even sure why they included Nabbit here. Honestly, it really makes no sense, but I suppose it's just a classic case of Nintendo adding an easy mode into the game, much like they do with all their modern Mario titles now. Now, one area where Luigi U really disappointed me was the boss fights. While I understand creating brand new encounters may have been a bit too much, they could have at least made the current battles more interesting, or at the very least, amped up the difficulty. Because as it stands, these are all completely identical to how they were in New Super Mario Bros. U. Each time I fought a boss, it just made me groan at the absurdity of it. I mean, why go out of your way to change each and every single level, but not even add just a bit more challenge to these fights? Boom Boom plays the exact same throughout the entirety of the game, and even the Koopalings are just the same old rehashed battles that they were before, with the exact same movesets and obstacles. And this is just nitpicking, but I find it completely unnecessary how we're forced to watch each cutscene over again. Like, if you're playing Luigi U, you almost certainly played its predecessor, so I don't see why we essentially have to watch the same identical cutscenes all over again. But oh well, I guess. If there's one thing New Super Luigi U has done for me, it would be sparking excitement into the future of 2D Mario. And as we've seen with Super Mario Bros. Wonder, one can only imagine how that will innovate and carry the series forward. And while we may have Super Mario Maker to keep us occupied with 2D content, there's nothing quite like an experience straight from Nintendo themselves, so I'm very curious to see what they bring us in this totally new experience that isn't a bunch of levels created by fans. And though some of those levels are genuinely impressive, I don't think I'm alone when I say that many of us fans have been yearning for a 2D experience brought to us with that classic Nintendo charm and polish that we all know and love so much. Depending on the success and feedback of Super Mario Bros. Wonder, the entire franchise could change, leaving us with either incredible future entries or bland stale repeats, such as what happened with the new Super Mario Bros. Games. So at the end of the day, I'm really just hoping that either way, Nintendo realizes that their fans want nothing more than a quality experience which stands out from the others. Nothing is worse than a stale rehash of the past, and while I love the Wii U, you simply can't forget that its sole purpose was to capitalize off the success of the original Wii, which ironically led to its downfall. Thankfully, Nintendo has seemingly noticed what causes their past mistakes to be so detrimental, and as of late, they have been pumping out incredible titles for the Switch. So here's to hoping that they don't let down the fans and strive to create truly innovative and magical experiences for years to come. That's going to wrap up this retrospective on the series of New Super Mario Bros. It was a rocky ride, but I'm glad I finally got the chance to look at all these games in depth in order to analyze them to see where Nintendo went wrong with each entry. It's not hard to see why most people by this point have grown tired of 2D Mario, as playing all these games back to back has really put into perspective just how bland and uninspired most of these titles are. But I suppose there's not much more we can do than wait it out and see which path Nintendo chooses to take, as it may very well be the deciding factor for the future success of the company.